We're going to be moving very swiftly now. I see that your questions are pouring in. I mean, you guys are not joking, no. And the only criteria, the only, the only standard it has to meet is that it is not attacking personalities. As long as your question is issue-based and we have time, I'll do my best to make sure that we pose it. May I also just request of the candidates that an answer to a question should not be longer than 2 minutes so that we can go around. There are 6 of you here, and I imagine that if we're going to be able to cover ground, we should not go longer than 2 minutes. So let me quickly take this question from Ajayi Samuel Olubumi, who is asking the presidential candidate of the Accord Party, who has talked about his scholarship plans, etc., and what he has. He says, what practical governance experience are you bringing on board based on the complexity and demand for the job of a president?
Okay, thank you. Like I would always say, thank you for the question. I had mentioned it clearly that the next president of Nigeria must be one that has passion and value for his people. If we check all over the world, check leaders who have transformed their nation, these are the 2 values they possess. We must be able to look at this, and I have done that privately. I'm the only one seated here who privately can speak to what I've done in Nigeria as to one person who has not been in government. So that is what we are bringing. Then, a matter of experience, I've been, at my age, I've been so, progressive when it comes to building business all over the world. Like I said, we are enlightened people. It's important that we begin to research to know the candidate that is applying for this job. Not through sentiment, but knowing what they possess and what they've done. I've not stand here to tell you what I would do. I'm telling you what I have done. And these are criteria to be used to adjudge how a leader will perform if eventually get there. I have also been a social entrepreneur. Social entrepreneur, my gain is towards the welfare of the people. I have served the people as a social entrepreneur. We are talking about the challenge of sustainable development. I have served as the West African Secretary General to West African Renewable Energy Board.
I'm going to have to interrupt you just to quickly, add one additional question. It's closely related. I'm trying to see if I can find it here, but essentially, the person, is raising questions about how true it is that you have, been given scholarships for the past 15 years if you're 39 years old. The person wants to know, are you saying that you started at the age of 24?
Okay. It's there. You can go check. It's all there online. I am the founder of one of the biggest NGO in Nigeria called Unique Foundation. I'm also the president of Global Wealth University. I'm the president of Pan American College in California. I own various educational platforms. And because, I must say, of my background, I lost my father at the age of 12. And it was very difficult for me to go to school. Ever since then, I have run a passion to ensuring that Nigerians and Africa, I have a university in Togo that gives Togolese scholarship, a country I can never become a president. It demonstrates passion. You can go check it. Our school that has scholarship all over Nigeria have more than 120,000 students now, all on scholarship. And we've been doing this for many years. So it might look impossible, but it's possible for me because it's a thing of passion. And I know there are so many Nigerians out there. Who is also pursuing their passion to service the Nigerian system. I represent one of those Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be posing a question to the vice presidential candidate of the NNPP. I understand that he has to leave us shortly because he has to travel. Well, we're going to wish you journey mercies, but just before you go, is it possible for you to quickly take this question from Can we have some quiet in the house, please? Thank you. From Amadi Nathan Chukwuwike, who's asking, considering the situation in Nigeria with respect to corruption and mismanagement of our resources, how do you plan to handle these and the cabal that are holding government officials to ransom and depriving the country of necessary growth?
We need a leadership that is courageous, strong political will, leadership that is determined, that has the passion, is passionate about Nigeria and the Nigerian citizens. We need a leadership void of confusion, void of compromise, a leadership that will be centered on the people. Now, corruption is a thing of the mind. When you have full education on who you are, what you must be doing for your own country, and void of greed, you are selfless. You have prioritized Nigeria for development, curb leakages, void capital theft, where monies are siphoned abroad, increased productivity and production that have been impaired, leading to waste of time, resources, and energy. Nigeria is a beautiful place where, when all of us love it as it were, and sit down and take our leadership or our leaders accountable for every bit of thing we are saying today.
Sorry, Bishop, sorry to interrupt you, I'm sure that we'll have to reduce the counting. I'm interrupting you so that I can repose the question. Do you acknowledge that there is a presence of a cabal in this country which is holding it captive?
That's what I say, self-will, courage to do the right thing. When you get into a place of power and you have no preference but competence, character is going to be the order of the day, enjoy the rule of law. It doesn't matter whose ass is God. Once one is corrupt, is made to face. So the law shouldn't be two-sided. It should be what is meant for one should be meant for the other one. So the cabals have as much power as is given to them. But when you choose to say, no, I am for the people and the masses, then they will follow suit over time.
Thank you very much for your response there. The next one, I'm looking at this one. Well, it looks like questions are just coming in and covering the ones I had seen earlier. I'm going to take this one from Adekola Maria Oluwafunke, who has a question for the presidential candidate of the Labour Party. She says, governance is not a one-man affair. How are you going to ensure that you put machinery in place to deliver on these promises? And how do you plan to... And how do you plan to sustain the economy? I'm trying to find the question, but that's basically what anyway, let's just start from the fact that governance is not a one-man affair.
Of course, that is right. You start by building a team. It's about being able to have a team that is competent, that has capacity to do the right thing. It's not one man affair, and I agree entirely with that. And I can say that I have shown in private sector where I've built and led a team at least that capitalized the smallest bank into 25 billion bank in my 40s. And I've built a government that at least has shown by the time we left office, you could see the result of that government in areas of HDI, education, health, and everything, where we move from where we are to number one, and being able to sustain. If we talk about the issue of corruption now, I can say I have been governor in Anambra State. I'm responsible for all the finances. Go there and show me where their money is missing.
found the second part of the question now. About when she talked about missionary, I also imagine that she might be talking about the National Assembly. That's one. And then she also asked, how do you plan to sustain our economy in view of all the debts already incurred?
I governed Anambra State without having one member of House of Assembly from my party. Once you're doing the right thing, everybody knows that in his constituency there's a problem. We're talking about Nigeria. You can do it without having members from your party. If you're doing the right thing, you can put it on the table. You're talking about issue of debt. There's nothing wrong in borrowing. I've said it consistently. What is wrong is when you borrow for consumption. Every country of the world borrows money. America today, which is the biggest economy, owes almost 100% to its GDP. The same thing for the second biggest economy, China. Third biggest economy, Japan. Everybody is owing. But what you use the money you borrowed for to do is what makes the difference. If I had time, I can show you two countries that borrowed at the same time with Nigeria. Today, they've changed their economy. Their per capita have increased. Nigeria went south because what we borrowed, we don't know where it is. It's not properly invested.
Okay, let me ask this put this to Mr. Shore of the African Action Congress. This is from Ajayi Christopher Oluwadamilare. Even though it's not addressed in particular to you, he says, what is the sustainable plan for education in Nigeria? Education is meant to sustain Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Let me make a quick clarification. I heard from some of our colleagues here that the unity of Nigeria is very sacrosanct. I disagree with it because it's not part of the SDGs that Nigeria must be united. Except we sustain Nigeria on the basis of justice. Nigeria can never be united, and it can never continue to be united. Having said that, I want to mention that I am a beneficiary of free education, and it will be a crime in this country to continue to insist from those who benefited from free education that the younger ones who are poorer than when they existed should pay through their noses to acquire education. The solution to sustainable education is three: investment, two, investment, and three, investment. Invest in education. Give our people great access to education. Give them quality education. And to those who have been in government and those who are still in government, stop this universal basic education. We don't need basic education to advance because the rest of the world is no longer using slates and chalk to train their children. They are using computers. Let's invest in those kind of quality education so that our children can compete with the rest of the children or people around the world in the nearest future. There is no basis for a country that cannot pay 1.3 trillion naira to ASU to buy vehicles for the Republic of Niger, SUVs. We have gotten our priorities wrong, and until we get it right, we can never do anything right, and that is why you should change your mind and vote for those of us who have experienced greatness and who want to bring it to Nigeria. Thank you.
Let me just quickly add this question to it because it is closely related. It's from Akinyede Felix Mayowa. It says, can any of the candidates make an open pledge for adequate funding of education, and to what percentage if elected? So,
I make a pledge to spend at least 26% of Nigeria's budget in the direction of education. And I mean it because, as I said, I benefited from free education in Ondo State. Anybody from Ondo State here? Yes, most of us benefited from free education. And we will be committing a crime against humanity if we don't make this pledge and ensure that it's implemented in our lifetime.
Well, any of the other presidential candidates, when it's your turn to speak, can also make a pledge on education. But this one is from, I'm trying my best not to mispronounce this name, Eborua Odiano St. Precious, and it's for Dr. Okowa. He says, what specific initiatives or incentives will your administration bring that will create the environment for the private sector to work? What do you think are the current policies affecting private sector contribution to the economy? And what do you think about the borrowing to finance budget and the huge size of our recurrent expenditure? What is your plan to cut costs?
Yes, thank you so much. Concerning the borrowings, I want to get from that place. It's good to borrow, but you must borrow for the right reasons. But if we are borrowing as we are borrowing today, and you're borrowing to subsidize fuel, and we are spending trillions of naira on fuel subsidy, when you cannot grow the infrastructure that will enable the private sector to develop itself, and then you're crowding out the finances of the private sector because the borrowings are both external and internal. Internally, with the huge borrowing in this country, we are truly crowding out the private sector because the banks will prefer to borrow to the government than lend to the private sector, and that is not good enough. And when we do not encourage the private sector to get into all sectors of the economy, we are closing on the power sector, and the government is not able to ensure that that whole part is such that we're able to provide enough energy. It's not good for us. But if the government liberalizes the power sector in such a place that from generation to transmission to distribution, and there are no bottlenecks, we'll truly find that the private sector will be in a position within a short while to truly provide the energy that we require for industries to be able to grow in this nation. That is not the pathway at the moment, and that is the pathway we intend to go. And it is very important. And then the other creative environments for the private sector, we need to begin to create infrastructure development from. Because without infrastructure, it's a big problem. We need to have special economic zones where people can truly have shared facilities to be able to develop their industries. The high cost of energy and high cost of financing is not good for the industry, it's not good for the MSMEs, and it's really choking the private sector from developing. And only the private sector can truly engage our people and ensure that they're employed at the moment. But that is not what is going on. So everybody is now looking for a government job, and the government jobs are limited because that is why it's continuing to crowd to create a very high recurrent expenditure on the part of governance, because there is no other source of generation of employment, and it is not good for our nation.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. Let me quickly take this question from Ganiyu Bukola Jalil. He's asking a number of, he or she, I'm not very certain now, is asking a number of questions. I'm going to pose a number of them to you, Professor Omeadi. He or she says, can each of the presidential aspirants tell us with a timeline what will be done differently to, one, adopt, achieve, and sustain improved, sustainable economic prosperity for Nigeria beyond your tenure? Let's start from there.
Thank you very much. One thing we must hold on to is that I will recount the great writer in Vanguard, Dele Shobowale, saying that my governor, Professor Saludo, will be the first economist to be the governor of a state. You don't have to be an economist, as we're getting on here, to do things right. Barack Obama was a lawyer. Biden is a lawyer. So, you see, what happens, and I keep saying it in governance, is that it's the mindset of the man who has been entrusted with power that you check. If the man has that is what we often refer to as a political will. And that is the bottom line. In other words, if you get into power and if I become president of Nigeria, then, of course, I've said it elsewhere, at the snap of a finger, a president will get all the options on his table before nightfall. And then it becomes your mindset. What is your thinking about Nigeria, which will follow on my own part to remove my personal interest from the picture entirely? In other words, everybody who has brought anything on my table will have to explain to all of us, and I'll listen, how to get it across. We are here with ICAN. The biggest thing with ICAN is not the arithmetic of the work, it's the probity. That is what is in your motto. The probity and integrity of the work. Not the numbers, not what the numbers tally to. And so, for me, all the time, my interests, and I will pursue it to the end, is for the good of the people, to make sure that I take actions which will render Nigeria in a better shape. I have spoken about Child Rights Act. For instance, you hear those things, they don't sound falutin, but that is where the issues are. Children are on the streets, and 11 states in the north have refused to domesticate them. Of course, I will find carrots and sticks to make them do so. And you begin to work Nigeria from that point. So
okay.
If I may get the other side. So these are the personal aspects that Peter Umadi stands for, and which I will strive to run on in this campaign.
Okay, let me hope that this question doesn't disappear. It just did. I just saw it a moment ago. Yes, this one is from Oyeyemi Hezekiah. Says, Nigeria is one of the largest oil producing and exporting countries of the world, and only country among crude oil exporting countries importing refined oil products. This is visibly unsustainable. If elected into office, what are you going to do to bring about sustainable oil product availability in the country? And also, what are you going to do about fiscal indiscipline evidenced by our budgeting system? Let me just take this too. This will be to the candidate of the Accord Party.
Nigeria will continue to import finished crude oil products if one, we do not invest in local production. Yes, we know that the government recently, not recently, for some time, had also added the licensing of modular refinery. All our refineries in Nigeria are not working optimally. We have the LMA Petrochemical, we have the Warri refinery, and check they not work. So if as a nation we want to stop importation of crude, then we must invest in ensuring that our local production is up to date. Then secondly, we talk about oil theft. As a nation, we must begin to look at our problem peculiarly and begin to solve them. Who are those involved in oil theft? They are local guys who develop local technology, and they steal crude and refine it to produce diesel. Why can't we begin to look at this local technology and begin to look at how we can also license small-scale refinery in Nigeria? As a nation, there can be a crime. You can build a system around that crime, control it, monitor it, and it will be legitimate. We must ensure that we produce and refine our crude oil so that we can produce. Today we have diesel at 800 naira. Do you know why? Because the first product from illegal refinery is blue gas. So once you fight those guys, I'm not in support of what they are doing, but you kill the economy. You know why? Because 80% of the diesel we consume in this country is produced from the creek. We must begin to look at a way of fighting corruption in a way that it doesn't kill the economy. Let us invite these guys. They have a local technology. Let's improve on it, make the technology environmentally friendly, and let's look at how to give license. In China, China is an industrialized world, not because they have massive industrial skills. They encourage small-scale industrialization, small-scale equipment. You go into a room in China, you see a family producing bottle. A family, because there is an intentional procedure to support family units. What we must do is we need to look at our technology, begin to look at how we can solve our problem, looking at the peculiarity of our problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to take, I saw one about providing credit system. This is, it was specifically to Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa about what your party is going to do to provide a credible credit system to the private sector.
Okay, first is to ensure that our banking institutions are in such a way that, as consolidated as they are, that they are ready to lend to the real sector. But as I said, what we see in Nigeria today is that government is overborrowing internally in various ways. And because of that, funds are not even available for you to ensure that the private sector has access to those funds. And when they have access, because the funds are not easily available, they are lending to them at rates that are not sustainable, which is not good enough. So government must rework itself on the way to in terms of fund generation, so that we do not overcrowd the banking system in this country and get access to where we are. That is one. Then we must also work with private institutions with incentives to ensure that we're able to create an infrastructure development fund. And that is very key, because once we're able to get that done with tax incentives and other incentives, then they're able to create that institution and have that fund that people who are actually in very critical projects, either in energy or even in road construction and very major projects, can have access to such things. Then we must begin to work with the many people may not agree with it, but we must find ways to begin to work with even the workers. Because we have a huge pool of funds that we have in our pension funding. Because they do not trust the government, they will not want that lending to the real sector. But when you get them to work with the private sector, and they are not lending to government, but they are lending that is worked in such a way that they're able to lend with the credible organized private sector, then that private sector is able to develop the infrastructure, because the government alone cannot develop the infrastructure. And as they develop the infrastructure, then you begin to net away from the tax that they would have paid over the years. It has to be a collective approach, and this thing is very key for us to be able to achieve that. But the totality of what we need to do within the government is such that there has to be a totality of reform in our approach. But as I said, you cannot be borrowing money and you're spending trillions of naira. Like next year, they were telling us they wanted to spend 6.72 trillion for the purpose of subsidy. And we know that it is possible for us to encourage the private sector. Even the Dangote refineries is getting close to a final finish. But he has bottlenecks that he has to go through. What is government doing when we know that that refinery is able to, the 650,000 barrels per day? Whatever be the problem that Dangote is having, government should find a way of facilitating it so that we can have in-house, in-country production of oil, of the crude oil. And then thereafter, we begin to have all the savings. Because as long as we continue, all the money coming from sale of crude oil, we're applying it back and borrowing more to even get oil products, that is the refined products, into Nigeria. That is not the pathway to go. We must find ways of working with the private sector, especially when they are in critical sectors that are currently draining our economy, and ensure that we assist them and give them the enablers to enable them finish up what they have. That I visited the place. I know it's about 80–85% complete. Just the 15 to 20% left, they are stuck. And government is not paying special attention to it. It is not right.
Well, thank you for that answer. I'm going to ask, this is from Luther Agbobil, AC. I'm going to be posing it to all the candidates. He wants to know, what is your stance on open grazing? Let me ask you, you're the presidential candidate of the Labour Party.
My stand on it is very simple. We have to look at what it is today.
Just give me a moment, sorry. I did note that the vice presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party has to take his leave. Bishop Isaac Idahosa, thank you so much for being a part of the conference today. Thank you for presenting. Yeah. I do not know if you want to quickly share with us. Well, he's already going. Thank you so much for your time with us here at the ICAN conference. Thank you. Okay, so we move on now. You were just about to share with us your thoughts on
look at what it is today and be able to ask yourself, are we getting the maximum production and effect on the open grazing as it is today? If not, you go into what is modern. I've discussed, well, I've discussed this issue even with all those who are involved with it and say, this is what we think we can do.
We want to take a group photograph with all of you and see.
All right, so we're having a group photograph so that all the candidates can be part of it, briefly. So we'll need the chairman, the IFAC president to also come up, Mr. Alan Johnson, and the chairman of our board of past presidents to also come up, sir. Please hold on, we see other candidates coming up.
So if we'll just settle down quickly, sorry about that interruption. The presidential candidate of the Labour Party was taking on a question, a very controversial one, which has caused quite a bit of conflict in our country today. And that's a question on open grazing.
Like I said before, it's an issue that needs a holistic attention, because today you have several states that have passed a law banning open grazing, and it's an issue that is very controversial. So it is something you need to sit down with all involved to be able to dialogue, discuss, and be able to come to a solution that is a win-win, especially one that can help in increased production in that sector. That is what I'm going to do. I'm not just going to attend it from sitting down in office, but it's something You need to sit down with all that is concerned, especially states, and discuss and agree on way forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to be posing one for you again quickly. This is from the past president, and the question is to you, Mr. Peter Obi. He says, could you please give an insight as to how you would rule the country with very little, if any, support from the National Assembly, where your party seems to have no representation at all?
I've said it before that I did it in a state. There's nothing, anybody who tells you that when it comes to development, he has to do according to party, is not telling you the truth. Once people are sure you're doing the right things, they will key in and support you, even those who are not in your party. This is done up globally everywhere. So I do not see it as a hindrance. People can tell you, oh, it's going to be a hindrance. Who doesn't want development in his constituency? If I decide today, Niger State, for example, 8 local governments is already in hands of bandits. If I decide today to invest in agriculture, to pull Niger State out of where they are today, they will not tell me because it's not my party. So that is something that is very, very visible and doable.
Let me ask Mr. Shore, this is for you, about what you're going to do about electricity. It's still a problem. It's closely related to the topic of sustainability for economic prosperity. We cannot run an economy on generators. What are you going to do about providing electricity?
Solutions. One is to make a very important point to everyone seated here today, that Nigeria can never experience industrial revolution without electricity. Electricity, to my mind, is even more important than security at this point. Because if we get our electricity right, we will solve about 70% of our insecurity. Because with electricity gotten right 24 hours in a day, a lot of the people who are constituting bandits, criminals, and terrorists in this country will have a job to do. Having said that, I will immediately go into using energy mixes because we are on the cusp of renewable energy transition in the world. We cannot continue to rely both on dilapidated systems and dilapidated ideas in the electricity sector. That was what led the party of our candidate here to spend $16 billion generating darkness in Nigeria. We cannot continue that. We must use solar energy, wind, tidal energy to generate electricity for Nigeria. We must rebuild our transmission lines, take them away from where they used to be and give us brand new transmission lines. But most importantly, we must break down the electrical distribution system not to be a national grid. We should have regional grids. We should have grids that serve estates, serve campuses, and ensure that we can retail electricity so that you can grow electricity on your roof and sell it or pull it together to power your own area without coming to Abuja to beg somebody at the National Assembly or the presidency to give you electricity. That is an archaic idea. Because this is very, very important. I hear it all the time. How do we resolve the electricity problem without discussing fundamental solutions to generating electricity? Countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt, where Governor Peter Obi attended his, you know what I'm talking about. They are all growing electricity to the point that they are supplying Europe electricity. You know, I promise not to talk about other candidates.
Can I ask you a quick comment on what you intend to do about open grazing?
I completely would go for ranching. The reason I would go for ranching is that it's safe, it's secure, it's also a source of generating power.
The question is how?
Biogas.
How?
No.
Because we've seen, just a moment, we've seen the attempt of the federal government to try and get states to yield land to herders.
There's a difference between grazing and try to grab land. The federal government is interested in Ruga. They want to grab land. I'm not interested in that. What you're saying is that churches, look, the people that consume the most amount of beef in the country are in the southwest. Yoruba people. They eat any part of, there's no part of cow that they don't eat. Nose, yash, everything. Why can't they do what Awolowo did in 1956 when he had a grazing place in current Ondo State, Akuna, where they were able to supply beef to the southwest? You don't need anybody to come from Niger to give you beef. But all of them are always playing, lip service to the governor of Ekiti State. Flew cows to Ekiti by first class. One of them escaped at the airport. They didn't know how to catch it. You understand? That is not governance. And if we are still using the old federal government system, then we might as well just keep voting for this guy to continue in office. You are asking me for new ideas. Let me talk about it. Ranching is the solution. Hydroponic ranches, not Ruga or land grabbing. Because part of where Nigeria got to where it is today is the Land Use Act that Obasanjo introduced when he was in power. We haven't solved that, and you want to grab more land instead of allowing modern ideas to give you beef. That's what I'm saying.
So let me quickly pose this to Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, and I imagine that your response might be a bit different because you're currently sitting as governor of Delta State. You have experienced firsthand the clashes that have resulted from the conflict as a result of open grazing. Is your party thinking of approaching this any differently?
In the first instance, the federal government of a truth has no land of its own. Lands by our constitution belong to the state government or to the people of the state and is held in trust by the government of the state. So first, for us to find a solution, there must be a collaboration and a realization that all component parts matter. Both the federal government, the state government, and the local governments will need to sit together to attend to the solution. I agree with him that ranching is the pathway, but ranching is also expensive and it's not something that you can easily get to immediately. And the fact is that for ranching, it takes a lot of capital to be able to do that. So what do we have to do? We have to work with the state governors, find a way to encourage the private sector and the state governments to have access to funding at cheap rates, agricultural rates, not rates beyond 10%, so that with such funding, they are able to actually have what he referred to as grazing places, as Awolowo did, but with an improvement. Because now when you have such grazing places, and they are secured, and you have provided facilities, actually you have developed ranches. And then, as we get to that level, you also need to talk with the people, because if you provide this and the people are not utilizing the ranches or the grazing places, then in that case, you have done nothing. So it means that there has to be a sit down with the Métis Allah and all those people who are involved in cattle rearing to let them know that it is more profitable. And when a few of them, you start pilot schemes and they begin to see the profitability of having their cattle in that place rather than trekking it and suffering the people, you'll find that with those ones, you begin to recreate hope and more people will have to get into the ranches. But you must work with the state governments who are the owners of the land. You must bring the private sector in, because when you allow the government to run it, most times it's difficult for government to run such facilities on their own and to be able to run it sustainably. So we must find that niche, and it is going to require bringing everybody to the table for us to talk as it provides cheap agricultural funds for the purpose of establishing those ranches. And as of today, the greatest problem, because most states have made laws, but they are not able to do anything because they don't have their own police force. So whatever law you're making comes to naught, because you are not going to be able to use the federal police to do what you want to do. But we have committed that we are going to allow states have their police force. And when people begin to realize that there's something that the economy will grow with ranching or taking their cattle to reserve areas that are well structured, but you have to pay some money for that purpose, so it becomes an economic thing which definitely works for all, and it is very important. And the state police will be able to ensure that you do not just roam around all farmlands and begin to destroy the crops of others, because it's what is creating a high level of insecurity across the various states in Nigeria, and we need to put a stop to that.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pose this also to the candidate of the Accord Party. Professor, have you given thought to open grazing, what you're going to do about it? And in the same breath, you might want to comment on electricity generation.
Okay, quickly, let me first talk about the electricity generation. I often would say this, that government does not know how to do business. Government should not be in business, rather, only but to create an enabling environment for business to strive. If we check carefully, we discover that every sector that government have huge involvement has problem. The power sector, the tertiary education sector, check them. Because government's role should basically be creating an enabling environment for investors to strive. So one of the very first things we'll be doing in electricity is to look at the policy framework. Today, Nigeria needs 100,000 megawatts of power. We are only able to produce 4,000 megawatts of power. We have companies in India, just companies that belongs to an individual, producing over 40,000 megawatts of power, a whole country. So we must begin to look at the policy. NERC, the Regulatory Council, let us have more investors come in and begin to handle power generation, power transmission, and power distribution. We must not make a sector that is hinged upon national development monopoly. We don't monopolize the sector. So the monopoly currently in the power sector is what is making Nigeria not have power since 1960. If we must grow as a nation, the power sector must be liberalized. And we need to start having those that know how to do business run the power industry. That is the way out. And for open grazing, why are we talking about open grazing? Because of the huge security challenge we have with those who practice those businesses. First, we need to solve the security challenge in it. We need to identify, we need to database. See, one of the biggest problems we have as a nation is data. We are in a country that have no data. We are in a country that operates no system. See, if we must prosper as a nation, we must have data. We don't even know Nigerians that are giving birth to. Okay, we talked about the NIM and the BVN. Even if we are trying to build a data for Nigerians to know who Nigerians are, what about the children that are giving birth to? We must begin to run a management system for all our hospitals so that a child that is giving birth to in Nigeria is recognized. That is the only way we can build a country. Today, this is ICAN. You know all your members. Your members have number. You know where they are. You can track them. As a country, we must begin to build a system. The solution to our problem is to build a system, and that can only happen by digitalizing the economy. I'm a digital professor. And I understand this. We talk about digital technology. I want to a little disagree with my friend, Mr. Peter Obi, who said one of the ways to make Nigeria a productive economy is to invest in the vast land in Yobe. No. In as much as we must invest in agriculture, subsidize food, but one of the best ways to convert Nigeria to a productive economy, one, is by investing hugely in Nigerians. Two, is by making Nigeria a nation that has what? Friendly business economy. Are you aware that Nigerian visa is still one of the toughest visas to get in the US and China? A country that needs investors. Are you aware of the kind of policies we have that encourages double taxation and frustrate investors for coming into this country? Many investors that are in Ghana and other West African shores have Nigeria as their target market. But the only reason why they will not come into Nigeria is because of our poor business environment. Okay. So we must begin to rejig it. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is this. We must invest in human, we must invest in technology, we must create an enabling environment for business to strive. In so doing, human beings naturally will move in the direction that profit them the most. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Professor Peter Umeade, I'm just going to ask for your comments, your quick comments as we wrap up now. After that, after you've spoken on open grazing, is this something you'd like to talk about? Let me just quickly ask you. Open grazing and electricity. And after that, I'm going to, go around all of the presidential candidates to give their closing comments. And that's where we'll have to wrap up this session.
Yes, open grazing, ladies and gentlemen, we have to find a new beginning, which must start by calling a spade a spade. That is what has kept us where we are. Take open grazing. The defense of the federal government sometimes is that they have grazing routes, which they want to hold on to, which were made in the past. But does it include trespass? Like we've said here, does it include damage to farms, to crops? Of course not. So, you see, if you're in a country and you want to rebuild, you must start from somewhere and you must put your feet down and do the right thing from the beginning. So my own suggestion is that the farms, because when you talk about thoughts, that is harm to persons or property, you talk about who came there first. The farms that are there should be protected before we begin to look into what we're doing to cattle that are getting into farms are destroying them. In Owerri on Saturday, I was there. The songs that greeted me from the women that I went to see were that NEMA has destroyed all our crops. And not just destroying all their crops, women are abused, people are killed in those farms. And then we'll talk about security. And then we come here and we want to gloss over these issues. Then we don't want a new country. APGA will not be for that. If somebody like me coming from where I'm coming from, no. I will first of all secure, bearing in mind the issue of the grazing routes, the right of every Nigerian to traverse the country from the beginning to end, but also bearing in mind that issue of trespass, especially to food sustenance and security. So I will first of all secure the farms, then we'll begin to sort out, no matter how long it takes, who to give what right, to do what, about his own source of livelihood. Don't forget, because the cattle is someone else's source of livelihood, as against the farm, which sometimes is for the basic sustenance. Now, on a general note, I want to make this point here because this is a very good area of calculative minds who are looking into why all of us are here. The 27th president of United States of America, his name was William Howard Taft. William Howard Taft later became the 10th Chief Justice of America. It was Howard Taft who built the Supreme Court as we know it today. It was Howard Taft who got money from the legislature, from the executive of which he was one, and started building the Supreme Court and supervised it until he was no more and his predecessor took it. And that is the grandiose edifice that you see today that is called the United States Supreme Court building. So, lesson to go from that, I have administered the judiciary for 8 years. I'm the best man to reposition Nigeria, and I give you 4 years to do that.
Okay. Thank you so much for your response on that. There's a quick one here, and I would say that any of the presidential candidates can respond to it as we close. It's also from another past president, and it is specifically about the body of chartered accountants. It says, accounting professionals use technology in our role as trusted advisors, performing sought-after services to businesses, government, SMEs, non-profits, and individuals. What will you do to help build a highly skilled and competent pipeline of professional accountants in Nigeria? This is as we wrap up. You'll answer this question, each one of you, maybe in 30 seconds, and also give us your closing comments. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. I am a digital professor, and I know that in the accounting profession, you have your professional exam, which of course is taken online. We've grown into a digital economy. State like Zamfara has shut down education for 3 years. With a digital education, schools can be shut down because of insecurity, yet education continues. I have been in the field of human capital development, and I also understand this. We must begin to engage professionals. ASU is on strike. We have students studying accounting in the university. Once ASU resume, they will be asked to wrap up their semesters or their section within 2 weeks. What we have done is to destroy the mindset of the Nigerian people. When you educate your people, you improve their mind. Education is about mind reformation. We must begin to build accountants. We must begin to build every person in every profession to be able to develop Nigeria as a nation. Foreigners are not going to develop us. We as Nigerians, we have the duty to develop our country. So huge investment in the profession is key. Digitalization and ensuring that we get the right hand to do the right job. With a system, you don't need to know anybody to become somebody. We're going to build an economy where a man that knows nobody can become somebody without knowing anybody. That is digitalization. That is strengthening the institution of Nigeria. Currently, I have said this and I'm doing it. We have opened up our digital university for Nigerian students that are at home suffering from ASU strike to study. As we speak now, we have hundreds of thousands of students studying for free. I did that. I don't need to be in government before I can impact. We have hundreds of thousands of students studying online in all over Nigeria. I'm committed to this cause. I'm not in this race to be famous. I'm in this race because I know I have what it takes to solve the lingering problem of Nigeria, from power to security to education and every facet. Thank you so much for inviting me. God bless you.
First, as I thank ICAN for inviting me, I want to truly thank you for gathering together. As you gather together to talk to yourselves, you're actually causing yourself to sit down, to examine issues, and to see the way forward. Yes, technology is very important. In my state, I believe that those who are conversant with the other state, we've gone very far in ensuring. And I'm ensuring that technology plays a major role in our accounting system. And the World Bank has been very, very useful to many states in going in this direction. But beyond this, it's important that we must take advantage, as it did say, of online learning. And I think that ICAN has to lead that and ensure that people don't have to come all the way to Abuja to gather, because that is a great expense to the people. So we must work using technology to ensure that we have very regular courses for our various accountants, both in the public and the private sector, and I think that is key. And that is something that government will support in the various states. We're realizing that more of the accountants are within states and the organized private sector than even at the federal space. So that is quite important. Then going forward into where we are, we need to recreate hope for Nigerians. And in recreating that hope, we need to be sure that we are one people, and we commit to being one people. I want to disagree with my friend. Nigeria has to be united for us to move forward, because if a component part of the state of the nation is doing well and another zone is not doing well, we will continue to experience these issues of insecurity going forward. We need to ensure that we create jobs and wealth for our people, and that is going to be through a private sector-led economy that's enabled by the government of the federation and government of the states. And we must work together to ensure this. In our educational sector, it's very key that we must emphasize science and entrepreneurial education going forward. We cannot continue in the pathway that we are taking at the moment. And that is inclusive of ICT development in our various schools. And I think that this is very key to us. And we must ensure that we continue to manage the health of our people and manage our populations in such a manner that it is constructive and productive, not what we find at the moment. Because the more the women are producing 8, 7 children, and usually within the poor class, that situation is going to create insecurity continually, and that ought not to be. So we must find ways of managing this in going forward. But coming to the energy sector, it's important that we do not only rely on the major electricity issues. Captive power is there. In my state, we are running so many of our government facilities in captive power. That is what is going on at the moment. And the more we're able to generate captive power in various places, in such small circles, we'll find that we'll be able to reduce the energy needs in generality, and it's important. ASU is on strike. I run 4 universities in my state, but the 4 universities are currently in section. That is because we pay special attention to education. We have 4 universities run by the state, and the 4 universities are in section. It is doable. It depends on your commitment. It depends on what you are set out to do. When a people are uneducated, they are a lost people, and we must take special attention of that. And I believe that it's important that we rework this country in the best interest. Everybody has to be included in the growth of this nation. Otherwise, we'll be growing insecurity rather than growing the economy. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much. I want to say that one of the most difficult things to get over is when an accountant asks you to find a receipt for every transaction you hold. And then I start asking myself, why is it easy to steal in Nigeria if there's an accountant doing his or her own job in every sector of the country, demanding for receipts for every transaction? But the truth is that our biggest problem in this country is the opaque way we transact business, particularly in the public and private sector. And I want to call on our accountants seriously to help us get rid of paperwork. Paperwork is one of the easiest ways to steal, and get involved with real digitalization and technology. Don't let me lie to you. The computer is about to steal your jobs if you don't get up to speed with technology. There will be less and less accountants at these conferences if you don't get used to the way the world is changing. And as I've asked of you, those of you who are in the room and those who are watching and listening to us, when I come to government, I'm going to need a lot of accountants. Every nook and cranny of the facet of life of Nigeria and Nigerians, so that we can sustain this country further. Finally, and in closing, I don't want to say too much. I know people demand experience all the time, but I urge you to look at the meaning of experience in the dictionary. It says people who have had direct contact with things that are happening and those who have observed them. I'm sitting down here with 32 years of experience, having participated in fighting for democracy, observing all the good and bad leaders. I've never met any good leaders, not many of them, and also ensuring that this country works up to the point that it is today. Ask yourself on the other side, the people with experience, what they have done to your country. The country is broken, is disunited, and is disheveled. I just urge you to choose between darkness and light. Vote right in 2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I heartily thank the ICAN for inviting me here. I've enjoyed the long day, and I wish you well. Thank you very much.
Well, let me thank ICAN for the invitation and continue to urge that they continue to discuss for the interest of Nigeria. A few quick comments. If I go to what the Accord candidate mentioned when he said about what they said about consumption to production. When I mean that, I talk about the entire value chain. I did say we need to create an enabling environment, a regulated environment that will allow businesses to thrive, especially micro, small businesses. Not having time to expatiate, I would have expatiated on what I did. And in terms of education, I mentioned it, I was very clear when I talked about HDI. I said, go to Anambra and see what we did in education. I don't think anybody can talk about education in this country without talking what happened in Anambra State, where even a presidential candidate has said schools were closed for 2 years and he did not allow a governor to come back. But the same state became number one, 2011, 2013 to 2013. So it's a difference. So that is the wrap-up of that. On issues that we are discussing, we need to move the country. I say it again, this country needs to move from consumption to production. It's not producing enough, it's not exporting enough. There's a lot you can do today to create jobs. We can't have a country of this size with this 30-something% unemployment and don't have problem. Every country of our size, from Vietnam to Indonesia, have less than 10% unemployment. That's why they have less problem. And they have issues that we have here, agitations and all banditry. But the more they pull people out of poverty, the better they are doing. And like I said, doing simple things and doing it consistently. Next year's election should not be based on ethnicity or tribe. There's no tribe in Nigeria that buys bread cheaper or have uninterrupted electricity or have better roads and everything. It should not be based on religion. The Muslims don't buy bread cheaper, neither do Christians. All these things are ethnic. All these things we see, ethnic, religion, or my tongue, are all elite conspiracy to keep us down. When people talk about it, let's look at the past. What were people able to do in the past? Where are they coming from? Let them show us where they manage. If you say you're not going to be corrupt, let's see how you manage the last money that was given to you and everything. Next year's election must be based on capacity, on character we can trust, competency, capability, and determination to do the right thing. Nigeria have all the potential to be a great country, and I say it, give the opportunity to somebody who is competent, he will turn around Nigeria. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much. On this note, we have come to the end of this session. I have to thank very much the candidates that have graced this occasion. The presidential candidate of the Accord Party, Professor Christopher Irene Inumole, the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umeadi, the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, the vice presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, Bishop Isaac Idahosa, who had to leave us, and also the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa, who is currently the governor of Delta State. You have heard them, and I'm sure that come 2023, February 2023, they would know whether you have been able to convince them to vote for your party, for their party. But at the end of the day, don't forget, the choice is yours. The choice is in your hands. So vote wisely, as they say. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much for having this session.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Can we rise up and give them a standing ovation? Thank you, thank you.